Ever wonder what folks really mean when they talk about gut feelings? I used to think it was just one of those things people say, some vague, mystical nonsense like a sixth sense or a feeling in your bones. But now, yeah, I get it. I really do. That inner voice, the one you shove to the side when life's busy, it had been screaming at me for months before my wedding to Lena. I just kept muting it. It started out small, a tiny whisper that something felt off between Lena and Zane, my best friend since college. That whisper got louder, turned into a siren, but I was so buried in work and wedding planning that I brushed it off. My job at a software consultancy was chewing me up 12-hour days, nonstop. And when I wasn't working, I was jumping through hoops trying to organize this wedding Lena had been dreaming up. Big, expensive, and tailored to impress her parents, Edward and Celeste Dawson. Now that pair, nothing was ever good enough for them. Lena's folks weren't subtle about their standards. They wanted fancy venues, gourmet food, and flowers that could cover a football field. They agreed to split the costs, but their idea of reasonable made my bank account flinch. Meanwhile, my parents, my dad, a retired high school teacher, and my mom, a nurse nearing retirement, were stretching every last dime to help cover our share. Every time I tried to rein it in, Celeste would drop lines like, "We're the Dawsons. We don't cut corners," or "You don't want your bride looking cheap, do you?" And Lena? She'd flash that smile and say, "Come on, babe, it's once in a lifetime." Looking back, that line feels like a bad punchline. I started noticing the weirdness between her and Zane, little things I tried not to dwell on. They'd be off in a corner laughing a little too long. He'd look at her in this way, a little too soft, too familiar. It hit me in the gut every time, but I brushed it off. I was exhausted, running on fumes. Figured I was just being paranoid. But the signs were there. They texted constantly, way more than what you'd expect between a guy and his best friend's fiancée. Sometimes I'd catch one of them smirking at their phone, and when I'd ask, it was always the same, just a meme or inside joke. You wouldn't get it. Thing is, I trusted Zane with everything. We'd been tight since freshman year, roommates, study partners, drinking buddies. Hell, we'd even covered for each other during some dumb college stunts. I saw him as family. I wanted to believe he'd never crossed that line. I kept telling myself, he's my best man. He's got my back. And Lena? She was from a different planet compared to me. Grew up with money, connections, the whole socialite setup. Edward dabbled in politics. And Celeste, well, she was the queen of charity galas and backhanded compliments. When I proposed, it wasn't exactly a celebration. They let me in, sure, but always with this vibe like I was some charity project she brought home. They were all about image, and the wedding was just another extension of that. The venue alone probably cost more than my car. But I played along, tried to make everyone happy. About a week before the wedding, Zane offered to handle hotel bookings for the out-of-town guests. He came at me all smiles, showing me screenshots like he had it covered. "You've got enough on your plate," he said, and I appreciated it. For a second, it felt like old times, me leaning on him, like I always had. Then came the rehearsal dinner. We hosted it at the venue. Lena walked in wearing this white dress that might as well have been a wedding gown. Her dad's side barely acknowledged my folks, and mine? They looked like they'd accidentally walked into a royal banquet. It was pearls, champagne, and a sea of polite smiles hiding sharp eyes. After the rehearsal, folks migrated to the lounge for a low-key after-party. Music was soft, drinks were flowing, people were mingling. That's when I noticed Lena was gone. Called her, straight to voicemail. One of her bridesmaids said she stepped out for some air. Fair enough, I thought. But then I realized Zane had vanished too. Still, I tried to play it cool. Maybe he was helping her, or ran out to grab more drinks. I told myself not to go full conspiracy theorist. But that voice inside me, it was getting louder, pushing harder. I waited, watching the clock tick by. Half an hour later, I gave in, pulled out my phone and started scrolling, hoping to see something harmless, maybe a funny post or a group selfie. Instead, I saw a short Instagram story pop up on Lena's account. It vanished in seconds, but it was enough. The carpet pattern in the background was from a hotel, not the venue, not anywhere we were supposed to be. My stomach flipped. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to know. Without thinking, I jumped in my car and drove toward the hotel district. I didn't have a plan. I was just following instinct. My mind raced the whole way, trying to rationalize, explain, excuse. But deep down, I already knew. I checked a couple spots, started with the upscale hotels. Then, at one of those sleek boutique places, I saw it, Zane's car, parked near the front. That was it. I walked inside like I had every right to be there, heart pounding in my chest. Took the elevator up to the 9th floor and started scanning room numbers. Every step felt heavier than the last. My body was on autopilot, but my mind? Racing. I needed to see it. I needed to know if the voice I'd ignored for so long had been right all along. And man, I was not ready for the answer waiting behind that door. The overhead lights in that hallway felt way too harsh, like they were spotlighting me before I even had a chance to figure out what the hell I was walking into. But I wasn't ready for a showdown, not yet. Some part of me, the part that needed closure, insisted I get undeniable proof. I had to be sure. I didn't want to ever question myself later, wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. So, I crept closer to room 923 and pressed my ear to the door. At first, there was nothing, just the sound of my own heartbeat pounding like a drum in my chest. Carefully, I tried the handle. To my surprise, it wasn't bolted from the inside. Someone had left it secured only by the default electronic lock. Funny enough, Zane had given me a master key card a few weeks earlier, just in case there's a guest room mix-up before the wedding, he'd said with a smile. I dug it out of my pocket, slid it into the reader, and held my breath. The little light blinked green. The lock clicked open, soft and sinister. I remember thinking, they handed me the knife they're about to fall on. My stomach twisted. Slowly, silently, I slipped inside. The room was dim, shadows dancing lazily across the walls from the bedside lamps. I caught the sound of soft, hushed voices, intimate, close, and I instantly felt my blood starting to boil. There they were, on the king-size bed, tangled up together like a scene out of a bad dream. Lena, her hair a mess, and Zane, leaning over her, both of them mostly naked. She was stretched across the blankets, and he was half draped over her, whispering something I couldn't quite catch. Then she giggled. That was enough. A wave of fury surged through me, hot and sharp. My fists clenched on instinct. I wanted to storm in, rip him off her, beat the smug out of his face. But something inside whispered, not yet. No reaction. Just get the proof. And that was enough to hold me steady. 12 hours. That's how close we were to the wedding. I wanted them to think they'd pulled one over on me, to walk down that aisle thinking I was clueless, only to have the truth hit them in front of everyone they loved. I raised my phone, switched it to video, zoomed in. My hand shook as I hovered over the record button. Did it all, I told myself. Let them see what you saw. I filmed enough to capture it all, Lena's face, Zane's position, the timestamp. They had no idea I was there. Then Zane whispered something like, "We'll never get caught," and she laughed again, soft, smug, dangerous. I caught every word. My rage doubled, but I held the line. No scene. Not yet. I kept repeating it like a prayer. Once I had the footage, I backed out, keeping the camera rolling just long enough to grab some of their sick little conversation. I shut the door as gently as I'd opened it, then bolted down the hall toward the elevator, feeling like I had a live bomb ticking in my hand. Outside, the night air hit me like a slap, cold and shocking. My heart was hammering like I'd just run a race, adrenaline rushing through every vein. I stared down at the phone in my palm, the evidence glowing back at me. My best friend and my fiancé. Just like that. I didn't go home. I couldn't. Instead, I drove around aimlessly until I ended up at this dingy all-night burger shack. I took a booth in the back, ordered a coffee, and watched the footage again. There was no doubt. That was when the plan started to form. If they thought they'd embarrassed me, they hadn't seen anything yet. I didn't sleep. By 5 in the morning, I'd had 4 mugs of espresso and was jotting down a rough outline of my wedding speech. I knew the setup. There was going to be a slideshow at the reception. Childhood photos, cute couple moments, all that sentimental garbage. I had helped plan it. I knew how the AV system worked. All I had to do was switch the input. Phone, flash drive, whatever. There was a part of me that hesitated. I mean, yeah, it was pretty extreme to show something that private in front of a room full of people. But then I thought about what they did. On the night before our wedding. Behind my back. And I decided, yeah, if they were okay betraying me like that, then they'd better be okay facing the consequences. At 7:05 a.m., I finally went back to the apartment Lena and I had shared for nearly a year. Predictably, she wasn't home. Maybe she thought she'd sneak in before I woke up and act like she just had a wild night with the girls. When I stepped inside, everything looked untouched. No signs of her. The bedroom felt foreign now. I saw her charger still plugged in on the nightstand. The ring box I gave her was still out on the dresser. That gut punch of heartbreak hit me again, but so did the fury. She torched everything we had, and for what? A cheap thrill with my best friend? I set my phone to vibrate, tried to get a little rest. My mind wouldn't let me. Around 9 o'clock, I heard the door beep. She was home. I didn't move. I just listened, eyes closed, pretending to sleep. I heard her tiptoeing in, light steps, like she was hoping not to wake me. She didn't even peek in the bedroom. Instead, she slipped into the guest room, probably to fix herself up, get rid of the night's evidence. Half an hour later, I strolled out like nothing was wrong. Gave a fake yawn, scratched the back of my neck. She was sitting at the kitchen island, hair brushed, dressed down in a tee and sweats, sipping coffee like this was just another lazy morning. "Morning, babe," she said, smiling like a damn actress. "I crashed at a friend's place last night. Too much wine at the rehearsal dinner, you know how it is." I gave her a smile, warm enough to pass as genuine, but inside, my thoughts were anything but calm. My mind was looping that video from last night over and over like some twisted movie reel. "But that was one wild party," I said, my voice smooth, like I hadn't spent half the night clenching my jaw. "Glad you made it home in one piece." I leaned in and brushed a quick kiss against her cheek, swallowing down every bitter word burning the back of my throat. She looked up at me, eyes searching, hesitant. She was studying my face like it was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. I let my expression stay blank, maybe even a little distracted. I needed her to believe I was clueless. Just a few more hours. That's all I needed. The ceremony was set for noon at Northbridge Hollow Manor, real high-end stuff. The kind of place people post about for weeks. My parents showed up early, around 10, both glowing with pride, dressed sharp like it was their big date too. They had no clue what was about to go down. I hugged them, but it felt mechanical, like shaking hands with ghosts. Mom looked beautiful in her pastel dress, glowing with that mother-of-the-groom energy. Dad gave me one of those firm, fatherly backpats, the kind that reminded me of when I used to trail after him as a kid. I smiled on autopilot. "Gonna double-check the AV stuff," I told them. "Be back soon." Lena and her bridesmaids were tucked away somewhere, probably fussing over makeup and last-minute nerves. Zane? Most likely lounging with the groomsmen, sipping good whiskey and cracking jokes like nothing was wrong. I had zero intention of seeing his face before showtime. Instead, I made my way upstairs to the AV booth, tucked behind the second-floor balcony. From up there, I had a bird's-eye view of the whole ballroom. Tony, the AV guy, was fiddling with cables and testing sound levels when I walked in. "This is Nathan, the groom," he said, introducing me to someone nearby. "Zane said we had some extra footage to throw in?" "Yeah," I replied, forcing a smile that never made it past my lips. I pulled a flash drive from my jacket pocket. Figured I'd switch things up. Got something a little more intense than your usual slideshow. Tony chuckled, nodding. "Hey, your day, your rules. Just give me the cue." I held up the flash drive like it was a detonator. "When I say roll it, that's your signal." And yeah, that sliver of guilt tried to worm its way in. But I crushed it. They asked for this. The ballroom looked like a damn magazine spread, massive ceiling, chandeliers sparkling like diamonds, and rows of white chairs lined up like toy soldiers. By 1:45, the place was nearly packed. People were laughing, taking selfies, buzzing with that nervous wedding energy. Lena's side was loaded with big names, family, rich friends, socialites. Mine was smaller, tighter. Folks who knew me, not just my LinkedIn. Plan was simple. I'd be waiting at the altar with the officiant while the bridal party came down the aisle. That was the plan. But at 11:55, I was nowhere near that altar. The officiant, some longtime pal of Lena's dad, kept glancing around like he'd lost his keys. Edward Dawson, the big-shot father-in-law-to-be, was checking his watch like it owed him money. My mom fidgeted in her seat, that mother's intuition probably starting to hum. And Celeste, Lena's mom, leaned over and whispered just loud enough, "Where's Nathan?" Honestly, that boy's always been a little unreliable. Classic Celeste, never missed a chance to jab. Lena was likely losing her mind upstairs, spinning in circles, tearing at the hairspray. But I didn't know for sure, because I wasn't down there. I was up in the shadows of the balcony, behind the curtains, watching everything. The energy in the room was starting to twist, like the air before a storm. Right on schedule. At 2:07, that music should have hit. The doors should have opened wide, Lena floating in like a fairy tale. But instead, nothing. The crowd started murmuring, people shifting uncomfortably in their chairs. Perfect. I slid back into the AV booth. Tony looked at me, a little pale, eyes darting between me and the time. We're a bit behind, he said. You good? Yeah, I replied, stepping up to the mic. My heart was doing somersaults in my chest, but adrenaline had me steady. I hit the switch, and my voice poured out over the speakers, smooth and loud as thunder. Good afternoon, everyone. The entire room froze. Head snapped toward the front, expecting me to stroll out in a tux. But I didn't show. I let the silence sit. The officiant tried to salvage things, clearing his throat. The ceremony will begin. Actually, I interrupted, voice calm. There won't be a ceremony today. Gasps. Literal gasps. Chairs creaked. Someone let out a stunned, "What the hell?" Lena's dad went pale. Celeste's jaw dropped so hard I swear I heard it click. And backstage? I imagined Lena throwing things, screaming, mascara running. Good. Tony looked at me like he wasn't sure if this was real. I gave him a small nod. Before anyone panics, I said, I've got something I want to share. A little home video. Tony? Go ahead. The sweet little slideshow of beach pics and toothy grins disappeared. The screen went black. And then boom. The video. Grainy, but no doubt about it. Lena and Zane, tangled in a hotel bed, whispering and giggling like teenagers. Timestamp right there in the corner. Not even 12 hours before our wedding. I'd angled the camera just right. Zane turned slightly, face full in the frame, clueless I'd been in the shadows with the lens. The wall clock behind them sealed the deal. And then, all hell broke loose. People gasped, cursed, clutched their pearls. One lady just sat there with her hand over her mouth. I heard someone whisper, "No way," and an older woman, Lena's aunt, maybe, let out a loud, "Lord have mercy." Edward Dawson nearly fell back into his chair. Celeste looked like she'd just bitten into battery acid. Somewhere, probably in the groomsmen's lounge, Zane must have heard the noise. Too late now. I cut the video. The screen went black, but the ballroom was anything but quiet. The chaos had erupted like a bomb went off. Guests were yelling, whispering, gasping. Pure mayhem. Tony, pale as a sheet, turned to me. "What the hell, man?" he muttered, but I didn't answer. I just stepped away from the mic. Down on the floor, the doors flung open, and there she was. Lena, in her wedding dress. She looked like she stepped out of a bridal magazine. Flawless hair, perfect makeup, every detail polished. But her face told another story. Panic, confusion, raw, rising horror. "Turn it off," she shrieked, her voice slicing through the noise. She hadn't seen the footage yet, not the whole thing, but judging by the crowd's reaction, she didn't need to. Her eyes darted around, reading the shocked faces like a map of her downfall. Celeste, Lena's mother, stormed toward the projector, barking at the staff. "Who allowed this?" she snapped, jabbing fingers at anyone nearby. Tony was too stunned to move, let alone respond. Then Edward Dawson charged the aisle like a man possessed. "Nathan," he shouted. "Where's Nathan?" He spun around, fist clenched, face beet red. Guests parted like the Red Sea, unsure whether to flee or just keep watching. My mom had tears in her eyes. My dad stood by her side, tense, his eyes locked on the chaos, trying to make sense of what just happened. Lena's relatives looked like they wanted to disappear into their chairs. One woman fainted right there in the second row. Someone yelled for water. It was full-on bedlam. Then Lena spotted me. She looked up and saw me on the balcony, standing behind the railing. I stepped forward. Her face twisted, shock, fury, disbelief. The whole room followed her gaze and landed on me. It felt like I was center stage at the world's ugliest show. "What are you doing?" she screamed, her voice breaking. "You're not supposed to see me before the wedding, you coward." Of all the things to say, that, right there, was her concern? Superstition? I let the silence stretch for a moment, then said clearly, "There is no wedding." That stopped her cold. "You made sure of that last night," I added, my voice hard. Her face crumbled. She looked like she might actually fall over. "Nathan, please, let's just talk." "Not here. Not in front of everyone." "Why not?" I snapped. "You didn't have a problem screwing my best friend the night before we were supposed to get married. Everyone here flew in, dressed up, spent their weekend thinking they were coming to a celebration. I figured they deserved the truth. Celeste pointed at me, face flushed, shaking with rage. You've humiliated our entire family. Do you know how many important people are here? What you've done is unforgivable. I laughed, dry, bitter, without a hint of joy. No. What your daughter and Zane did. That was unforgivable. I'm just the poor bastard who decided not to stay silent. Then the crowd stirred again. A commotion at the front. Zane appeared, half-dressed, tux jacket open, tie undone, hair a mess. He looked terrified. Nathan, he called out, trying to sound calm. Let's talk, man. Just, let's not do this. I was already coming down the stairs. Lena darted in front of me, still trying to block me in that ridiculous dress, the train of it dragging like a weight. I shoved past her, shoving aside the tulle and lace. I was boiling inside. My fists were already clenched, my vision narrowing. Zane stammered, Dude, it wasn't what it looked like. She was upset. We didn't mean ow. I didn't let him finish. I slapped him. Hard. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. He hit the floor with a thud and a grunt, hands scrambling beneath him. Gasps. Audible gasps. Lena screamed. Stop. You're hurting him. She dropped to her knees beside him, not caring about her dress anymore. Celeste wailed. You animal. You assaulted him. I pointed straight at Zane. That man betrayed me. So did your daughter. They pretended to care about me, all while sneaking around behind my back. Now everyone knows exactly who they are. The room went silent. One of those rare, heavy silences. Lena stared up at me, her cheeks wet with tears. I'm sorry, Nathan, she sobbed. Please. Just stop. I turned back to the guests. Some were filming with their phones. Others just sat frozen in disbelief. Thanks for coming, I said, my voice flat. I'm sorry you didn't get the wedding you came for. But you got the truth. That's more than I did. And with that, I walked out. I shoved the double doors wide open and didn't look back. My parents followed. I could hear Lena calling my name, but it sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater. Back at the apartment, I was still shaking. My mom sat next to me on the couch, eyes red, hands folded tightly. Nathan, she said gently, are you sure that video was real? Was it really them? I nodded and showed her the original clip, raw, unedited, time-stamped. She gasped. Oh God. She wrapped her arms around me. I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve this. My dad was behind her, quiet for a while. Finally, he said, you did the right thing, son. You could have buried this. Instead, you stood up for yourself. We'd lost a lot of money on this wedding, but better that than wasting years of my life on a lie. After they left, I started boxing up Lena's stuff. Everything. Her clothes, her shoes, her skincare crap, all the little, aesthetic things she'd sprinkled around the apartment to make it look more homey. I labeled each box with a black Sharpie, stacked them by the door, and booked a U-Haul for pickup just before midnight. Then I drove straight to her parents' mansion. It was just as pompous as you'd expect, gated, immaculate, overly proud. The kind of place that screams we think we're better than you from the hedges alone. Even from the booth, I heard yelling, footsteps, chaos. The officiant stared at the screen, frozen. One bridesmaid shrieked, and someone off to the side yelled, turn it off. But I let it play. 10 full seconds. Long enough for every eye in that room to soak it in. The betrayal, the timestamp, the truth. When I rolled up in the U-Haul, the security guard at the front gate didn't even bother hiding how tired he looked. The man recognized me. I'd been through there more times than I cared to count. Everything all right, Mr. Cole? He asked, giving the trailer a once-over like it might bite. Just dropping off Lena's things, I said, keeping my tone calm, steady, like it was just another errand. He gave a quiet nod and pushed the button to open the gate. I drove up and parked right in front of that oversized front door, right beneath the obnoxious portico, columns straight out of a Roman fantasy, lights set up like a movie set. Honestly, it felt like the whole mansion was silently judging me. The fury I'd felt earlier had cooled by then, simmering beneath the surface, replaced by something heavier. Not sadness, not hate, just the quiet weight of knowing something was done. Finished. I took my time stacking the boxes, her clothes, her designer shoes, half a department store's worth of beauty crap, right there on the doorstep. Then I lifted the brass knocker and let it fall, loud and solid. Just once. Loud enough to wake the dead. Didn't hang around to see who answered. I headed straight back to the truck. As I pulled away, I spotted the porch light flicker on. Someone, probably Edward or that icy wife of his, Celeste, had come to investigate the disturbance in their precious world. Let them find the boxes. Maybe they'd make the maid haul Lena's stuff back upstairs. Didn't matter to me. As long as it wasn't near me, I was good. The next morning, I was still trying to shake off sleep when a thunderous knock shook my front door like someone was about to bust it open. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. But then I heard it. Edward's voice, loud, pissed, full of that country club arrogance. "Open up. We know you're in there." I tugged on a t-shirt, rubbed the sleep out of my eyes, and opened the door. And there they were. Lena looked rough, hair a mess, eyes swollen, not a trace of the polished persona she always wore like a mask. Edward stood stiff, dressed like he was heading to court, fist balled up like he was holding back. Celeste had that designer trench on like it was her battle armor, clutching a stack of papers like they were grenades. "We need to talk about compensation," Edward said, all fire and entitlement. I blinked, then let out a low chuckle. "Compensation? For what, exactly?" Celeste stepped forward and shoved the stack of documents into my chest. "For the wedding you destroyed. The venue, the food, the hotel blocks, we spent a fortune. You wrecked it all." I skimmed the list, unimpressed. "Your daughter screwed my best friend the night before the wedding. Pretty sure that's what wrecked everything." Lena folded her arms across her chest, glaring at me like I was the villain. "You didn't have to humiliate me like that. You could have just called it off quietly." I looked at her like she'd lost her damn mind. "I could have, but I didn't. You humiliated me first, Lena. I just returned the favor. Actions have consequences." Edward took a threatening step closer. "We covered half the wedding costs. Your parents paid the other half, but it went way over budget. We want at least 20 grand back." I stared at him, disbelief all over my face. "You're asking me to fork over 20 grand for a wedding your daughter blew up with her affair?" Celeste's eyes were like daggers. "You showed that disgusting video in front of donors, business partners, people who matter in this town. You've done serious damage." I laughed. One of those cold, bitter ones. "Oh, come on. This isn't about the money. This is about saving face. You're pissed because the truth got out. But maybe next time, your daughter should think twice before cheating." Lena's face twisted, hurt and angry. "You're such an ass. Maybe if you'd actually been there for me, if you really cared." I cut her off fast. "So now I'm the problem? That's rich. Get the hell out of my apartment." Edward tried puffing up again. "You know who I am? I've got serious influence in this city." I smirked. "Then you should have been more careful who you tried to silence." "I still have the original video, Edward. Full length. Timestamped. Your daughter's face right there. You want to test your influence? Be my guest. But remember, public opinion's a hell of a thing." That shut them up real fast. Lena dropped her voice, tried to sound sweet again. "Nathan, come on. We had something real once. We shared a life. Are you really going to throw that away over one mistake?" I stared at her like I didn't recognize her. "One mistake? You didn't accidentally fall into bed with Zane. You made a choice, Lena. You chose to betray me the night before our wedding. That's not a mistake. That's who you are. We're finished. Now get out." Edward deflated. His threats meant nothing anymore, and he knew it. Celeste gave me one last poisonous glare. "You'll regret this," she spat. I shrugged. "Not as much as I would have regretted marrying your daughter." They stormed out. Door slammed hard enough to make the walls shake. I leaned against it afterward, chest heaving, heart thudding. It was over. No wedding. No fiancé. No best friend. It felt empty. But I still knew I made the right call. Word spread fast. My phone lit up. Friends, coworkers, even second cousins I barely knew. Some were shocked. Some said it was brutal. Others said it was badass. I just told them the truth, what I saw, what I did, why I did it. Zane sent me one text, "Bro, I'm sorry. You gotta believe me." I didn't reply. He got canned not long after. Something about character issues at the office. Poetic justice, honestly. My parents were crushed about the wasted money, but relieved I didn't go through with the marriage. Dad said something I'll never forget. "Better to lose money than your self-respect." I promised I'd pay them back. The Dawsons? They went into full spin mode. Started spreading rumors, said I was jealous, unstable. Tried rewriting the story. But the guests? They knew the truth. They saw it for themselves. Their reputation? Tanked. Lena drifted around for a while, maybe couch surfing, maybe crashing with Zane. Didn't ask. Didn't care. I moved into a smaller place. Threw myself into work. Focused on getting my life back. The hurt stuck around for a while, but the anger? That's what kept me going. Eventually, the noise faded. New gossip took over. People moved on.